Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome everyone to today's Explainer. We're looking at a fascinating, sometimes kind of dramatic, but absolutely critical phase in the life cycle of a business, which is the end. Specifically, we're going to unpack the foundations of partnership dissolution and asset realization. Now, we spend so much time talking about how to start a business, how to grow it, how to scale it up. But what happens when that journey reaches its conclusion? Whether you're an entrepreneur staring down the end of a venture, or an accounting student prepping for a major exam, understanding the structured, rigid process of closing down a partnership is incredibly important. Basically, it takes what could be a super chaotic, emotional breakup and turns it into a clean, logical, step-by-step mathematical process.
So here's our roadmap for today. We'll start by defining partnership dissolution, then walk through the steps to dissolve businesses. After that, we'll look at assets and liabilities, calculate the final accounts and profits, and finally wrap up by solving some Wake standard questions. So I want you to just picture this for a second. The honeymoon phase of the business, it's over. Maybe the market shifted, maybe the partners are just ready to retire, or maybe things just aren't working out. What actually happens when business partners call it quits? I mean, this is a seriously high-stakes problem. You've got intertwined finances, shared debts, joint assets, and honestly, probably a few frayed nerves. You can't just lock the front door and walk away. It requires a really rigorous, definitive accounting solution to untangle the whole web, and that is exactly what we're going to solve today.
All right, moving into Section 1, defining partnership dissolution.
The absolute crucial point here is getting our definition correct right out of the gate. Dissolution of a partnership is the exact accounting process of bringing a legal business partnership to a definitive official end. Every single business entity has a beginning, its formation, but today we're strictly focusing on the academic and practical mechanics of its end. Basically, it means the original partnership agreement is officially terminated. The firm, as it was legally and financially recognized, is done. It will no longer exist.
Now you might be wondering, why does this happen? Well, the reasons can actually be pretty varied. Sometimes it's just due to the completion of the specific venture the partnership was created for in the first place. Or maybe it's the expiration of an agreed-upon time period. Other times, it's a legal necessity, like a bankruptcy or, unfortunately, the death of a partner. And, of course, sometimes the partners might just literally not be able to stand the sight of each other anymore. But here's the thing. Whatever the reason, whether it's totally amicable or completely fractured, the accounting response remains entirely objective and perfectly structured.
Let's move on and see how this builds in Section 2, Steps to Dissolve Businesses.
Identifying the specific steps involved in dissolving a partnership is a really critical learning objective here. It is a very specific sequence. First up, you must stop normal business operations. You aren't out buying new inventory or signing on new long-term clients. Nope. Second, you realize your assets. We'll talk a bit more about what realization means in just a second, but essentially, it means converting what the business owns into cash, selling it off. Third, you take that cash and you settle your debts. And fourth, finally, you distribute any remaining funds among the partners. Grasping this structured, step-by-step life cycle is absolutely key, because you cannot just jump straight to handing out funds without first realizing those assets and paying off the people you owe.
Which brings us right to Section 3, Assets and Liabilities.
And this brilliantly illustrates the ultimate balancing act of dissolution accounting. Over on the left side, we've got to accurately record the realization of assets. Now, realization is really just a fancy accounting term for selling off the business property, the inventory, the equipment, and, collecting cash from anyone who owes the business money. It's all about bringing the cash in. Then on the right side, we absolutely must account for the settlement of liabilities. This means taking that newly collected cash and paying off your creditors, the bank loans, and any outstanding bills. Because it is a strict, unbreakable rule of business. Outside creditors, always get paid before the partners see a single dime. So it's money coming in from sold assets versus money going out to creditors.
All right, on to Section 4, Final Accounts and Profits. I cannot stress enough how paramount accuracy is here. I mean, messing up these calculations means partners could quite literally lose their hard-earned money, or someone could walk away with a totally unfair share. So here's a breakdown of the final inputs that actually lead to a distribution. You've got two main accounting actions. First, you have to calculate the realization profit or loss accurately. So how do you do that? Well, you look at the book value of your assets compared to what you actually sold them for in the real world. Let's say your machinery was worth $10,000 on the books, but you managed to sell it for $12,000. Boom, you have a realization profit. But if you only sold it for $8,000, that's a loss. Once that accurate profit or loss is figured out, it gets shared among the partners based on their agreed profit-sharing ratio. Then, the second action is to prepare the final accounts. This step aggregates the partner's original capital, their share of that realization profit or loss we just talked about, and any current account balances to figure out the exact financial outcome, which is the final cash distribution among the partners. This is it, the ultimate payday, the very final check they receive as they close the door on the business for good.
And finally, let's wrap things up with Section 5, solving WEC standard questions.
Because really, the entire goal of understanding these foundations is to empower you to solve WEC standard dissolution questions with total confidence. When you actually sit down for that exam, a dissolution question can look like this massive, intimidating wall of numbers. It can be a lot, but what we've learned today gives you the exact tools to break that wall down. You know you need to open a realization account to track the sale of assets. You know you need a cash or bank account to track the settlement of liabilities. And you know you need capital accounts to determine the final distribution to those partners. By mastering this step-by-step logic, defining it, tracking the realization, paying the liabilities, and calculating the final accounts, you are perfectly equipped to defeat this final boss of your accounting exam.
So we've essentially covered the entire life cycle of an ending business as outlined in our source material. You know the definition, you understand the core reasons why businesses dissolve in the first place, you've seen the procedural steps from stopping operations to realizing assets and settling liabilities, and importantly, you understand the rigorous math required to calculate realization profits and prepare the final capital accounts. So you know the steps and you know the math. Honestly, the only question left is, are you ready to close the books, apply this logic, and confidently ace the exam or your next real-world venture? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer today. Keep learning, keep analyzing, and I will catch you in the next one.